My Gavanen Melonin and well met indeed. I am Arakia Galadirthan, the head of the modding team behind Divide and Conquer, and I'm here to tell you all today that finally a bug-free version of our past 2 years of our labours is available, and version 2.1 has been released. There is an installation video link in the description. I urge you to watch the installation video. And also it will appear at the the videos that pop up at the end as well. It'll be in those. But we've had a slew of obviously bug reports and updates and whatnot since version 2 went live only 1 week ago. But along with all of those bug reports was also numerous reports of things that were not bugs. And also, people have been crying out throughout this past week of what is actually going to be different in version 2.1. And so, I come to you with this, a sort of quasi-developer diary that is going to be broken down into 3 parts. So first of all, I'm going to run through a quick FAQ. Then I'm going to go over what bugs we actually did fix from version 2, so that hopefully we just don't get them reported. If obviously they're not there anymore, but if someone stupidly hasn't updated to 2.1, well, that's futile. Anyway, I'm going to tell you what we fixed, just so that you know. And then I will also tell you what we added in version 2.1. So there are also quite a few new additions to the game that we added because whilst we thought we were taking in a week's worth of bug reports, we could also put some time into adding some new stuff. So, let's crack on with the FAQ. The background, I'm afraid, is only going to be me jumping around the map to various different places, and I apologise for that. I'll try and keep it as short and as brief as possible. But let's start with the FAQ. So the biggest thing that we've seen reported in the past week that people think is a bug is this, variations on this phrase, I can't recruit units in Western Gondor. And it absolutely pains me to see people playing the mod who don't even understand basic game features. It's a feature of Medieval 2, and you would have had to have done it in Medieval 2, but everyone seems to have forgotten why and how, because they have been spoilt with the casual, friendly versions that Total War has become. You need a town hall, basically. A building in your building retinue somewhere will have this line, recruitment slots allowed. And until you build a building that has recruitment slots allowed, you can't recruit any units. This isn't Rome 2 or Warhammer 2 or whatever, whereby you can just build units without needing a thought. You actually have to build a building that allows you to build buildings, that allows you to train troops. And for every nation, it is your town hall. So in your building browser, they're always called Town Hall or Castle Hall if you're in a castle. He says, not being able to find it. Town Hall. It's always because it's always harder when they're blacked out, when they are built. Anyway, so you'll see recruitment slots allowed. Now, various unique buildings give recruitment slots. One off the top of my head that I know of is the House of Kings in Fornost, Dead Man's Dyke. That building, for example, comes with recruitment slots. I think as well that the Northern Dunedain, the Dunedain camp, if you're playing as Bree, that also gives you recruitment slots. So some other buildings do it, but on the whole, you will need a town hall or a castle hall. Otherwise, you can't train anything. Brief little cut. Apologies, I forgot to say this and I had to edit it back in. One of the biggest things we've seen reported, and almost the whole reason why I did this video and I forgot to say it, most of the Lord of the Rings movies have been cut from the game in order to reduce the size of the installer because we didn't think many people watched them enough to merit the installer being 4 gigabytes bigger. So, they've been added into a submod. Now, the videos I am talking about are the ones that pop up, for example, when you reach a certain location. Like, for example, you have reached Khazad-dûm, and then a video will play of the Fellowship walking through Moria. They have been cut and replaced with images, just pictures. Additionally, when you're selecting your faction at the game start, and then a video introduction will play, and for almost all factions, that will now be the Medieval 2 video. So, for example, Dorwinion will get the Byzantium video. If you're playing as Dol Guldur, you'll get the Poland video. If you're playing as Bree, you'll get the Normans video. Those are all the Medieval 2 videos. Now, you can add them back in with a submod, or, as I suggest, you can just turn movies off, and then you never see the intro videos anyway. And for help on doing either of those things, see the submod video, which will be in the description of this video when the submods are released. Until the submods are released, it will just say coming soon. But when they're released, there'll be a link to a video that installs the submods and shows you how to turn movies off. Okay, so movies aren't in the mod anymore. Right, UI for some images. People have questioned this as well. These are the images here that show your troops. originally they were all done to show what the unit looked like when it is not upgraded. However, then a gentleman came along and redid all of our dwarven units for us very kindly, and his skill was very, very good. And so we gladly took them on, but he did them to show what the unit looks like when it's fully upgraded. So there's now about a 50-50 split between unit cards. It might show you what it looks like unupgraded, like the Ardanium roster here, or it might show you what it looks like upgraded, such as the Dwarves of Erebor. Some nations, has been reported, are terribly passive, and we have made steps to change this, as I'll come on into a minute. But a lot of nations, do bear in mind, will try and kill the rebels within their lands and take the rebel provinces that border their lands before they will fight anyone else. So it might seem like they're being passive, when in actuality they are just trying to clear away all of the vagabonds from their realm. Speaking of rebels, they will attack you immediately if they are outside a city. So there's a rebel over here I can use. This gentleman here, Captain Algar, and this gentleman here, Diorthine. Both of those will roam around this region, attacking you if they want to, but more likely they will defend the towns nearby. If you were to assault Talathang, as the Dwarves of Erebor at turn 1, for example, then this gentleman, Algar, will certainly move over to try and assist. So do watch out for that. This is most prominent also in Minhiriath, where there's quite a few hidden rebel armies that just pop out of the trees and they come over to try and support the towns. So the rebels that are outside of the towns are active from turn 1, except for, I shouldn't say it really, but that gentleman can't move, and neither can that gentleman there, and that's in an attempt to show off those battle maps if you wish to use them. But everyone else can. And the garrisons of any rebel towns that are still rebel at turn 35, at that point, the garrisons of those towns can then leave those towns and also roam around. Now, they don't, because they realise that holding onto the town is more important than trying to kill invaders in the region. So they do actually normally always stay in the town, but they can leave the town if they want to. Right, a major change from version 2 is that invasions are back. So we're not going to add them in a submod because they're in the game. It transpired that the ring script relies on missions from the Pope. And the way to turn off invasions is to simply remove the Pope. And so we didn't realise that actually what we've done is broken the ring script. So this is something of an FAQ and a bug. The ring script now works in 2.1 as intended. We didn't realise we'd actually gutted it till last minute. Till literally the last minute. Courtesy of Racer, our saviour again. And so invasions are back. However, only the Orc nations now join them. This is twofold, really, because Rune, Harad, and Khand would quite often kill themselves by going on really far-flung adventures with their family trees. So in an attempt, or not in an attempt, but obviously we've made Rune, Khand, and Harad now have their own religion, so they can't join the invasions because of that. However, we have made it so that they can't be the target of an invasion. Even if they go to war with Mordor, they still cannot be the target of an invasion. However, Umbar can. Now, Mordor, the Pope doesn't choose Umbar very often at all, but sometimes he might. And while I say Umbar can, what I mean, of course, is that the Ardanium are a target of invasions. So do watch out for that. If you're playing as the Ardanium, you might be the target of an invasion. And also, invasions happen very, very early. And just to cover this, I know that in vanilla Third Age Total War, invasions happened very late. However, the method used to make invasions happen late in Third Age Total War cannot be used with and also have respawning Nazgul. They are tied together. We can't delay the coming of the Pope, which is how vanilla Third Age Total War did it. We can't do that without ruining a few other scripts. So, unfortunately, invasions will happen early, and they will always happen early. Fire arrows are gone from every nation except for Rune, as the faction overview last week showed. They get fire arrows as their default arrow, but no one else can use fire arrows anymore. And that was because the AI couldn't... basically just removed its use of archers because it always had fire arrows turned on, even when it was massively detrimental to their army. So we just removed fire arrows. They're also, I mean, whilst not horribly unrealistic, they are remarkably situational, and so it just tied in nicely. There's something I've seen reported as a bug that is not. If you attack the village of Ostsul, then the Amunsul battle map will play. If, however, you upgrade Ostsul and it becomes a town, then it will be a normal town battle map. Only whilst it is a village does it use the Amunsul battle map. So do note that. Do watch out for that. This is not a bug. It is intentional. Minas Morgul now has a passage down the side that it did not have before. I know it's barely even noticeable, and many people wouldn't notice it, but you can walk past Minas Morgul now. This was in an attempt to allow the AI to use the vast hordes of units that they always put behind Minas Morgul. They can now attack you with them when you're sieging the city out, which gives them a huge boost and it allows the AI Mordor to not be walked over so easily by a human Gondor player. So you can walk through that gap. It also does mean that you can ignore Minas Morgul and just walk. You have to go one tile at a time whilst you're passing these, and it will take you about 8 turns to walk past them in total. But you can actually just walk into Mordor now. Boromir, it turns out, was wrong. The Northern Dunedain family tree. The Northern Dunedain now have their own unique portraits for their generals. They no longer have the holdovers from Rohan or anything like that. They have their own ones. However, in order to facilitate this, every Wildman faction had to share the same dead portrait. So when a general dies, previously his portrait would just be a greyed out version of himself. But obviously many of you won't know how portraits work, and rest assured that in order to have the Northern Dunedain having their own portraits, all Wildmen factions plus the Northern Dunedain have to share the same dead portrait. So they now do, and it's just a very simple druid grave that I took off the internet and bashed into work for us. So if a general dies, an adopted or a man of the hour or a general that's come of age after turn 1, if they die, they will have a gravestone as their dead image rather than a greyed out version of themselves. It's not a bug. Bolg's champions of the Misty Mountains do still use the vanilla Third Age Total War model. That is correct. We wanted to differentiate them from the standard Warg models, and whatever version comes in the future, we might look to use the reforged Warg model that they've added because it looks very good. Denethor, the leader and great steward of Gondor, uses a standard Gondorian bodyguard. He does not use Citadel Guard, and this is so that if you keep him in Minas Tirith as a governor, he gets free upkeep. And that's basically it, because he's not actually, well, he is an alright general, but obviously the AI doesn't move out of Minas Tirith, and it's kind of thematic to keep him in Minas Tirith, and now he just gets free upkeep when he's in there, which was better, we thought. He gets a much bigger bodyguard contingent than anyone else because he's the faction leader and they get boosts. So he's going to have a large bodyguard size, but he does have the standard bodyguard. And second to last then for the FAQ, before I show you the welcome message and just run through that, someone suggested that Ginyard had been bribed by Rohan from them when they were playing as Isengard, but rest assured, bribery is not in the game. And this is just a little feature I just wanted to explain. If a town rebels or revolts against you, and it has a particularly high culture for a nation that is nearby, it has to fulfill those things. So it has to be like, so Ginyard has a very high Northman culture, and it happens to be very close to Rohan. So when it revolted from you, rather than join the rebel faction, it joins Rohan. That's a feature of Medieval 2. So sometimes when a town revolts, it will actually join an existing faction rather than just go rebel. So do be aware of that. Right, so then we come onto the bug list. Now we've done a lot of bug changes, and there will be a full changelog of the bugs if you want to actually read everything. But I've just pulled out the major bugs, and they are as follows. When the Total War submod comes out, the Ardenaim are no longer going to be defeated at turn 1. The towns of Tir Thuin, Nothfaraclaw and Gobadrine, all the way up here. So there's Tir Thuin, there's Nothfaraclaw, and there's Gobadrine up the top there. In version 2, they had the Hobbiton battle map. But now they actually have their own dedicated, unique Northern Dunedain battle map, which again, I'll talk about in a moment. So that's been fixed. The Mason's Lodge building for Bree now actually gives a bonus. It's not broken any longer. Muhad tribesmen and the Hashari units for Harad now need the Haradrim culture rather than a different culture, so you can actually train them. There were various Silver Surfer units for the Ardenayim and for Bree through their two various through the two scripts that they both have. So the Ardenayim enslavement and Bree's joining with the elves or the dwarves. There were Silver Surfer units in there. They're no longer Silver Surfer. Can now train Oricani units if you side with the blue wizards. They are no longer bugged, which was a big one. Harad are now also very active. They've gone from being completely inactive to now being very active in all of the little tests that we did before we gave 2.0, or while we've been testing 2.1. They are now actually the dominant threat in the south. They beat the Ardenayim up the coast, and they beat Khand up the centre as well. They're quite aggressive. The UI for Gondor's public health building, courtesy of Mike Golf on Total War Center, now has a description and a new UI image, so it actually has a UI image, because I forgot to do that the first time around. Dolvorn will no longer crash your game. That was the most peculiar bug, but I won't get into it. Just rest assured, Dolvorn doesn't crash the game anymore, so you can fight there willy-nilly. All Wildmen castles, this was reported, so castles, not keeps. So Baradvin is a keep, but Heret is a castle, as is Framsburg. They were showing as the Imladris battle map. That has also been fixed. A very simple fix, actually, so that's all nice and good. Rohan are no longer as passive, but they now get Tirith Anduin and Rochberg at the... Once you go to turn 2 and you do the turn 1 auto expansion, Rohan get Rochberg and Tirith Anduin, but they no longer get defeated as easily by Isengard, but it certainly still seems like Isengard has the upper hand in about 90% of the time. Whereas it used to be a bit more 60-40, it's now a bit unfavourable to Rohan, but they last an awful lot longer now, and they do actually try to survive rather than just roll over. The garrison building was reported as not providing a garrison if you were playing as the elves and in just certain random locations, but now it provides a garrison everywhere. So if you are playing as the elves, you will get a garrison in every town, but you get a very small one. You get half what everyone else gets. And also certain locations just didn't get a garrison, but they do now. Khand, Arun and Harad, their culture building now has its own UI image, which was not a bug, but we just never bothered to create one, and have done now. But also, they actually now give Men of the East culture. They no longer give Melkor culture, meaning that by building your own culture buildings, you were stopping yourself being able to train troops. That's been fixed. So you can build your culture buildings as Rune, Khand, and Harad. The catapult boulder no longer has those white squares behind it, and now actually looks like a flaming shot, as you'll see when we play, when I do various overviews. The Gwaith y Myrdain building for Linden and Imladris no longer is in the building browser of every single region. It is now only in the building browser of Ostin Ethil. There are no longer any broken sprites for units, so some units had black boxes around the back of them rather than a proper sprite, and those have all been fixed as well, so there's no more sprites. And finally, Mordor can now be killed by taking all of its regions. In version 2, linked again to the... no, not really, but owing to an incorrect entry in the Descript SM factions, Mordor could not actually be killed by taking all of their towns as we had intended, but now they can. You can destroy Mordor either by the ring, which now works, or by taking all of their towns, and both of those things work. So then we come on to the final section then. What changes have we added from version 2? And this list is actually the biggest. Although I was going to just say something was not a bug, and I've completely forgotten what it was when I was going through the bug list. I said, someone has reported this, but it isn't actually a bug. But no, it's gone. Completely forgotten what I was going to talk about. It might come up in this. Anyway, so, major changes then for version 2, or just the changes. Number 1, Belorn is no longer an absolute god in terms of money making. It is now a standard average money making region. It no longer makes as much as Khazad-dûm East. As I've already mentioned, the Dunedain generic villages, which are Fenestruinen, Tirthuin, Nochverchlor, and Gobadrine, they now actually have a unique Northern Dunedain camp style battle map. It looks very similar to their campaign strategy model. It uses those green tents, and it's just a simple little village battle map, which looks really cool. Thank you very much, Arcade, to that. The Elven factions summary. Sorry, I keep I keep clicking my tongue. I should stop doing that. The Elven faction summary at the campaign selection screen no longer says about that they can't build castles, because they can now build castles. The adoption range, which apparently a lot of people really were very displeased with. The adoption range used to be between 25 and 75 years old. But remember that a character in Divide and Conquer, no matter what nation they are, can live to 150. So 75 is actually only half their life. And 75 is about... 75 is about 300 turns until they'll reach old age. 300 turns. So it didn't matter if your adoptions were old, but people were very disappointed. So adoptions are now between the ages of 20 and 35, just to please you all. And then finally we come to the teaser I gave on Total War Center, which unfortunately no one got. It was a direction, it wasn't literal. I left a teaser saying, "Here there be dragons." And that is because the Withered Heath now has a custom battle map, courtesy of Leo's Oricani battle maps. And the Elite Dwarf has created a CSM, as you can see, for it. And that's why I said, "Here there be dragons," because of course the Withered Heath is famed for having dragons. It was a map direction, not a literal fact. Although it is both, but you get what I mean. So Anazanar now has a campaign strategy model to reflect its battle map model, and it is now unique. It's no longer just a little village. Leading in to that... Or is it further down the list? Well, I can talk about it now. Dane's Halls is now the Dane's Halls from Leo's new submod. So Dane's Halls is now new, and it looks absolutely amazing. It's incredibly simplified, though. It's no longer the same as the old Dane's Halls, where it takes about 30 years just to get from the gate to the square. It's now really simple. The square is right behind the gate. But there's a really complicated entranceway with really defensible points. It just looks really awesome. I urge you to fight battles in Dane's Halls because it looks epic. And if you have a hankering to play as the old Dane's Halls, when we've got you covered, because Zagkala has been updated to be the old Dane's Halls model and no longer is the exterior ruins kind of model. So that is also now new. The Misty Mountains Doom stack no longer spawns if you take Khazad Doom. It now only spawns on the capture of Goblin Town and if the Misty Mountains lose a lot of regions. So they just get a slightly less boost to the death stack, as it were. I'll talk about the welcome message at the end, but we've edited and updated the welcome message, and that has an FAQ in it as well, so I'll cover that at the end. The senile trait, which many people dislike, has been removed for quite a lot of factions, but it also now been made so that the minimum age someone can become senile is 110, and even then there's only a 10% chance of getting it. The most likely age that you'll get the senile trait is at 130, which is only 20 years before a character can die. Which is much better. And as I say, Numenorians can't get the senile trait, neither can dwarves or elves. Numenorians can't, elves can't, but Northmen can, dwarves can, hobbits can, and Bjornings can. I think they're the only ones that do now. Sellswords, a very minor point, but the sellswords, which are in almost all of the rebel armies that roam the world, they are no longer as good in auto-resolve. We've reduced their strength. So the AI will handle the roaming rebels a little bit better. The Elven Garrison unit, as I was talking of a moment ago, has been reduced in size, but the actual number of troops in the Garrison unit has been reduced as well. So, for example, were I playing as Gondor to take Akhnod-Iorn and build an armory, I'd likely get 2 units of full strength, 120-man Gondor defenders. If I were playing as Lothlorien and I took Akhnod-Iorn and I built an armory, I would get 1 unit of about 60 strength Elven defenders. They're just less overall. So the elves, you can't rely on the defenders as much, but they will at least do some dying for you, which is their real purpose, let's be honest. Dol Amroth now has a slightly expanded family tree. We've given Imrahil 2 fictitious sisters, and then we've married them off to various generals in the region. One of the generals is in that fort there, and the other one I think is the governor of Lynn here. But it just means that if Adrahil and Imrahil die, there are now 2 people to take up their slot, because Dol Amroth is reported as dying very easily, unfortunately, which we can't have. The land to the east of Caer Andros has been given over to the Henneth and Noon region, which then gives this actual bridge. So the battle map, the campaign strategy model has been updated, so there's only a bridge on the left where a bridge never spawns, but the bridge on the right now actually shows up. And we'll update if you build a stone road as well. Also, we've added a submod that Roher made, which gives Conqueror traits. Now, this is a very minor but very cool feature. If you are playing, for example, as Erebor, and you send a general over to Dane's Halls to take Dane's Halls, then he will gain a unique trait called Liberator of Dane's Halls, and that will be added to his name as an epithet. So it will say Gimli, Liberator of Dane's Halls, and that will only last until you get another trait that adds an epithet, such as the Infantryman, or the Conqueror, or the Scarred, or something like that. Because epithets just replace... So when you gain a new epithet, it just replaces the old one. So you'll only have the Liberator of Dane's Halls for a while, but it's cool. And there's a trait like that for evil nations and good nations for almost all regions. Not all regions, all custom regions. So places where there is a custom battle map or famous Lord of the Rings locations. So that's very cool. And then the whole reason why I actually chose to start as the Ardenaim is that they have new strategy models, courtesy of Como and the Reforged team. Now, we didn't, because we want the faction leader to be unique even when Gimilcard is dead, that means that Gimilzor and Gimilthon do not have unique strategy models. So Gimilcard will look like this golden gentleman here. But when Gimilzor or Gimilthon become the leader, they will then change to the default faction leader for Umbar, which is what it used to be in version 2. It's basically a black version of what Gimilcard looks like. But anyway, so these are your new generals. They no longer look like Ardenaim armsmen. And this is your new captain. He no longer looks like a pirate. He now looks just like a cool little warrior, really. But also the spy and the diplomat have been updated. There's your diplomat there, looking very cool, and the spy is over there, also looking very cool. So the Ardenaim have been really rounded out, and we thank the Reforged team and Como for that. And then the final little changes, I say, the men of the East, so Kandrun and Harad, let me just reiterate that they cannot be invaded, even if you are at war with Mordor. And the thing that I'd forgotten that I was going to remember is this one. I'm so surprised at how many people don't know this. And I'm sorry. I don't mean to cast any... to cast a shadow over your characters. But Fornost in the Third Age was known as Dead Man's Dyke. It is not a bug that we have called it that. That is its actual name in the Third Age. By the Third Age, Fornost has been a ruin, or by the end of the Third Age, Fornost has been a ruin for over 1,000 years. I mean... that is an insane amount of time. My country of England has only really been a unified country for getting on for 1,000 years. So it's easy to imagine that a name might change in that time. Because all of our names have changed in that time. But anyway, so it's called Dead Man's Dyke. When you upgrade it, if you play as the Northern Dunedain, the Ardenaim, Gondor or Dol Amroth, and you upgrade it to the rebuilt version of Fornost, it automatically changes its name to Fornost Orion. It is not a bug. And I'm really surprised how many people thought that was a bug. I mean, you could just Google search. Just do a quick Google. What is Dead Man's Dyke? It will immediately tell you it's Fornost. I can't believe the amount of people that reported that as a bug. Anyway, sorry, I shouldn't get too emotional, but I get very heated. And this is like my 5th year of being in the mod team, and I've had it up to here with all your crap, people. No, I jest. Anyhow, so the final thing is just the welcome message. So I've updated this to show a few little extras. For example, you need town halls or castle halls in order to train units. Characters can die of old age, but they won't start dying until they reach at least 120. The visual changes require a blacksmith, and then you have to upgrade the units. Bodyguards cannot go over 77 units unless they are a faction leader or they start with more units. But if a unit starts with a faction, so for example, Gimilcard, our noble faction leader, he starts with a bodyguard of 127 men, of Narut and Aru Royal Guard. However, if he goes below 77 men, he won't replenish over 77 men. I know it's all a bit complicated, but just 77 is the magic number. 7 is always the magic number. There aren't any assassins or merchants, don't report that. You can get diplomats and spies, however. Spies? Do note that many factions do have some restrictions. So orcs can't build the 3rd tier of castles, wild men can't go beyond large town or castle either, and Bree cannot get strongholds, and they only get large cities if you side with the mercenaries. The Balrog and Sauron can't will have more than one man. Most people know that by now. A lot of factions can't build boats. Elves get quite a long replenishment time. That's totally normal. The Palantiri are no longer used in the way that they were in Vanilla 3rd Age, if you've played that and you're coming to 2.1, which I highly doubt. But they are now just buildings that give big bonuses. Everyone gets their last stand script, and it's normally when they go below 3 settlements, so when they get 2 or less settlements. Ents will frequently crash your game. The Balrog and Sauron not so much, but Ents almost all the time. So do avoid Fangorn Forest if you're fairly regularly attacked by them. And do note that the Ent script on Isengard no longer exists. And I'll cover that in the Isengard overview. And I've lost the message, but that was all of the ones that are pertinent. So that is it. That is version 2.1. As I say, there's an installation video dedicated to it. It's very similar to the version 2 installation. In fact, it's almost identical. But I do just mention UAC in the new video. And the link's in the description and probably popping up on the screen now as we're getting down to the last 20 seconds of the video. So I do hope you enjoy version 2.1. Do report back on Total War Center, ModDB and Discord about your trials, tribulations, campaigns and failings. And if you do come across any bugs. But otherwise, have a jolly good time, old chaps. And I think that's everything. Until we speak again, dear friends, Navar and Aden Pedimad Melonin, and farewell.